So, you're driving down the N1, minding your own business, maybe singing along a little too loudly to some Brenda Fassie, when you see those flashing blue lights in your rearview mirror. Your heart sinks. Not because you were speeding, no, but because you know what's coming, the long, slow walk to your window, the casual lean, the almost polite. So, what are we going to do about this? It's a uniquely South African experience, isn't it? That moment where justice becomes a negotiation. Well, today we're flipping the script. Today we're putting them in the spotlight. Today, we're counting down the top 10 most corrupt traffic cops in South Africa. Now, this isn't just about a few cool drinks or a lunch money request. The stories you're about to hear are genuinely shocking. We're talking about intricate schemes, systemic extortion, and a level of audacity that would make a state capture politician blush. These are the officers who turned a public service into a personal ATM, and their actions have affected thousands of ordinary people just trying to get from A to B without having to pay an unofficial toll. This list was compiled from news reports, official investigations, and yes, even stories from people like you. So as we go through this hall of shame, I want you to do something for me. If you've ever had a run-in with any of these officers or someone like them, drop a comment below, share your story. Let's be honest, we've all got one. It's time to bring these stories out of the shadows and into the light. Let's get into it. Kicking off our list at number 10 is a name that might ring a bell for anyone who frequently travels the roads around Gauteng. Officer Sipho Mthembu. Now, Sipho wasn't your garden variety, give me a 100 rand and we'll forget this kind of guy. Oh no, he was an innovator, an entrepreneur of the illicit. He saw a problem, people in a hurry, and he created a solution, a very profitable solution for himself. His specialty was setting up unofficial express lanes near major intersections during peak traffic. He'd pull over drivers for the most creative of offenses. Your left tire looks a bit sad, or you blink too aggressively back there, classic stuff. But here's where his genius, and I use that term very loosely, came in. Instead of a straightforward bribe, he presented it as a service. He'd explain that the paperwork for such a serious offense could take hours to process. Hours. You'd miss your meeting, your kid's soccer game, everything. But for a processing fee, payable directly to him of course, he could expedite the whole thing. He wasn't just asking for a bribe, he was selling you your own time back at a premium. It was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. He created the problem, the stress, the delay, and then sold you the cure. He made you feel like you were getting a deal, like you were the smart one for avoiding the hassle. It was brilliant, in the most infuriating way possible. It was a business model built entirely on inconvenience and fear. The whole thing came crashing down, as these things often do, because of a combination of greed and technology. Officer Mthembu got a little too comfortable, a little too predictable with his prime locations. A local investigative journalism show, tipped off by dozens of complaints from frustrated motorists, decided to set up a sting. They wired a driver with a hidden camera and microphone, capturing the entire transaction in glorious high-definition detail. The footage was damning. You could see him deliver his whole practice speech, the feigned concern, the casual mention of the fee. The best part? When the journalist revealed the camera, the look on Mthembu's face was priceless. It was a perfect mix of shock, betrayal, and the sudden dawning realization that his lucrative side hustle was officially over. The video went viral, and Officer Mthembu went from traffic cop to national meme overnight. A fitting end for the man who tried to charge us for using the roads our taxes already paid for. Coming in at number 9 is a woman who understood the power of the pen, or in her case, the power of the delete key. Meet Sergeant Lerato Dlamini. She wasn't on the streets shaking people down. Her operation was far more sophisticated, more administrative. Sergeant Dlamini was the mastermind behind a massive ticket-fixing ring that operated right out of the municipal offices. She was the gatekeeper, the person who could make your problems disappear for a price. Think about it, you get a speeding fine in the mail, maybe 2. Maybe you've collected them like Pokemon cards. These fines add up. They can block you from renewing your car license. They can cause all sorts of headaches. This is where Sergeant Dlamini saw her market. She had access to the system, the central database where all these pesky fines lived. And she realized that with a few keystrokes, she could make them vanish into the digital ether. Her network was extensive. She had agents, usually tow truck drivers, mechanics, even other junior officers who would listen for people complaining about their fines. They would then discreetly pass along a business card, a phone number. Call this number, ask for Lerato, she can help you. It was like a secret society for traffic offenders. A call was made, a fee was negotiated based on the number and severity of the fines, and an e-wallet payment was sent. The scale of her operation was staggering. Investigators later discovered that she was erasing hundreds of tickets a week, from simple speeding violations to more serious offenses like reckless driving. She was single-handedly undermining the entire traffic enforcement system from the inside out. She wasn't just letting individuals off the hook, she was creating a culture where there were no consequences for dangerous driving as long as you could afford her fee. Her downfall was a classic case of digital forensics. An internal audit noticed some strange patterns. Certain officers' tickets were being voided at an unusually high rate, and many of these voids were being processed by a single user account, Sergeant Dlamini's. They started digging, tracing the payments, and connecting the dots. When they finally raided her office, they found ledgers detailing every transaction. Sergeant Lerato Dlamini, the Queenpin of ticket fixing, was dethroned by the very system she thought she controlled. At number 8, we have a man who turned the concept of a police roadblock into his own personal toll booth. Constable Themba Nkosi. For most of us, a roadblock is a minor inconvenience. A check for drunk driving, a look at your license disc. For Constable Nkosi, it was payday. He was a master of intimidation and manufactured offenses, preying on the vulnerability of drivers who just wanted to get home safely. Nkosi had a simple but terrifyingly effective method. He and a select few colleagues he trusted would set up unofficial, often poorly lit roadblocks on quieter back roads, especially on Friday and Saturday nights. They targeted people leaving restaurants or social gatherings, knowing they might be more easily flustered. The initial stop would be for something trivial, a dim license plate light or not stopping completely at a stop sign 3 kilometers back. Once you were pulled over and out of the flow of traffic, the real shakedown began. Constable Nkosi would walk around your car, tutting and shaking his head. Suddenly, your tires weren't roadworthy, your windscreen had a crack that was invisible to the naked eye, and he was pretty sure he smelled alcohol, even if you'd only had a glass of water. He would list a litany of offenses, each one adding to a fictional tally that would result in your car being impounded and you spending the night in jail. The pressure he applied was immense. He spoke with authority, using official jargon to confuse and scare his victims. He'd talk about Section 34 of the Road Traffic Act and the mandatory impoundment protocols. Just when the driver was at their most desperate, convinced their life was about to be ruined over a faulty windscreen wiper, Nkosi would offer a lifeline. A simple roadside fine, payable in cash, could make all these problems go away. No paperwork, no impound lot, no jail cell. His reign of terror on the back roads ended when a group of residents from a local community policing forum got tired of the constant complaints. They organized their own surveillance operation. For several weeks they documented Nkosi's bogus roadblocks, filming from a distance, noting down license plates of his victims. They presented a mountain of evidence to the Independent Police Investigative Directorate. Faced with video evidence and multiple sworn statements, Constable Nkosi, the Baron of the Roadblock, finally had to face a real one himself. Chapter 4. Our number 7 spot goes to someone who achieved a type of fame nobody wants. Officer Zanele Khumalo, the woman who was caught red-handed, or rather cash in hand, in a video that became one of South Africa's first viral clips of police corruption. Before everyone had a smartphone, capturing this kind of thing was difficult. But Officer Khumalo had the misfortune of trying to solicit a bribe from someone who was ahead of the curve. The story is almost a cliché now, but at the time it was groundbreaking. A driver was pulled over by Khumalo for allegedly crossing a solid white line. A classic he said she said offense. The driver, sensing that this was not about road safety, discreetly started recording on his phone, which he placed in a cup holder on the center console. What followed was a masterclass in how not to be a corrupt cop in the digital age. Officer Khumalo can be seen and heard on the video going through the whole playbook. First, the threat, "This is a very serious offense, you know. I can arrest you for this." Then the inconvenience, "The fine is 1,500 rand, and you will have to go to court." And finally the offer, "But maybe you can just buy me a cold drink and we can forget about it." The driver, playing along, asks how much a cold drink costs these days. This is where it gets truly brazen. Officer Khumalo, without a hint of shame, specifies the exact amount. She then instructs him to fold the money and place it inside his driver's license book before handing it to her, a common technique to hide the exchange. The camera captures the whole thing, the money being folded, the license book being passed, and Khumalo quickly pocketing the cash. She then smiles and says, "Okay, you can go. Drive safely." The driver didn't go home. He went straight to the internet. He uploaded the video to YouTube, and it exploded. It was shared on Facebook, Twitter, and played on every major news channel. The public outcry was deafening. Here was undeniable, crystal-clear proof of what thousands of South Africans experienced every day. The police department had no choice but to act immediately. Officer Zanele Khumalo went from being an anonymous traffic cop to the face of bribery in less than 24 hours. A viral star for all the wrong reasons. Chapter 5. At number 6, we delve into the world of logistics and heavy-duty corruption with Inspector Thabo Molefe. His hunting ground was the long-haul trucking routes, the economic arteries of the country, and he, along with a syndicate of other corrupt officers, acted like a parasite, bleeding the industry one truck at a time. Molefe understood that truck drivers are uniquely vulnerable. They're on tight schedules, carrying valuable cargo, and are often far from home. Inspector Molefe didn't bother with small-time 100 rand bribes. His was a much bigger, more organized operation. His syndicate would set up weighbridges and inspection points along key routes like the N3 between Durban and Johannesburg. They didn't just check for overloading, they would find fault with everything. Media group, police pointing out defects on truck, officer writing checklist during inspection, add it stock, add it distribute _equally, the brakes, the tires, the reflective tape, the driver's logbook, you name it, they would find a problem with it, real or imagined. The threat was always the same. We're going to have to impound your truck and your cargo. It will take days, maybe weeks to clear this up. For a trucking company, an impounded vehicle is a disaster. It means missed deadlines, penalty clauses, and huge financial losses. Inspector Molefe and his crew knew this. They were holding the entire supply chain hostage. The fine to get the truck released immediately was often thousands of rands per truck. What made Molefe particularly dangerous was his deep connections within the system. He knew which weighbridges were less monitored, who to call to get an impound order pushed through or ignored, and he had a network of informants who would tell him which companies were transporting high-value goods. This wasn't random extortion, it was targeted, calculated, and ruthlessly efficient. They were essentially running a protection racket on the national highways. The syndicate was eventually broken by a brave trucking company owner who decided he'd had enough. He collaborated with a private forensic investigation firm. They fitted several of his trucks with hidden cameras and audio recorders, and tracked the payments. Over several months they built an airtight case not just against Molefe but against his entire crew. The evidence showed a pattern of systemic corruption that was costing the logistics industry millions. When the arrests were finally made, it sent a shockwave through the freight community. Chapter 6, we're at the halfway point, and for our number 5 spot, we have a story of corruption that's as clever as it is criminal. Meet Sergeant Bongani in Ndlovu, a man who didn't just solicit bribes, he manufactured the evidence to justify them. He was a traffic cop, a photographer, and a con artist all rolled into one. His specialty was using the department's own equipment against the public he was supposed to serve. Sergeant Ndlovu's scheme revolved around speed cameras. He would be assigned to operate a mobile speed trap on a busy road. He'd set up the camera, and as cars went by, he would do his job. However, he had a little trick. After his shift, he would take the camera's memory card, and using basic photo editing software, he would manipulate the images. He would digitally alter the timestamps or the recorded speeds on photos of cars that were driving perfectly legally. A few weeks later, an innocent driver would receive a hefty fine in the mail, complete with a photograph of their car allegedly speeding. The evidence looked legitimate. It had the official branding, the picture of their car, the date, the time, and the speed. Most people, faced with what looked like concrete proof, would simply sigh and pay the fine. Who could argue with a photograph? This was the genius of Ndlovu's scam. It leveraged the public's trust in technology. But here's how he turned this into a direct cash cow. He had an accomplice who worked in the fines processing department. If a driver decided to contest the fine, their query would be flagged. Ndlovu would then get their contact details and call them personally. He'd pretend to be a helpful officer trying to resolve the matter. He'd say things like, "Look, I've reviewed the case. It's a strong one. You'll definitely lose in court. But perhaps we can make it disappear from the system for a small administrative fee." His scheme unraveled thanks to one particularly tech-savvy victim. An IT professional received one of Ndlovu's doctored fines. He knew he hadn't been speeding, and something about the numbers on the photo looked off. He analyzed the digital file of the image and found clear evidence of digital manipulation artifacts left behind by the editing software. He took his findings to the authorities, triggering a full-scale investigation that exposed Ndlovu's entire fraudulent enterprise. He used technology to cheat the system, and in the end, technology was his undoing. At number 4 is a case that, well, is less about a single dramatic scandal and more about a long, frustrating and honestly infuriating career. Officer Precious Mokoena is a legend, but, for all the wrong reasons. She is the poster child for the disciplinary system's failures. A traffic cop who has been suspended for corruption not once, not twice, but multiple times, only to reappear on the roads, seemingly untouchable. Her story is, a revolving door of misconduct. The allegations against her are like a greatest hits of petty corruption. Accepting lunch money to ignore expired license discs, taking donations to overlook cracked windscreens, offering a special price to avoid a drunk driving test. Each incident would follow a predictable pattern. A complaint would be filed, an internal investigation would be launched, and Officer Mokoena would be suspended with pay. During her suspensions, she would enjoy a paid vacation, courtesy of the taxpayer. Then, after a few months, the case would quietly get bogged down in procedural delays, union disputes, or, well, lost evidence. Eventually, the suspension would be lifted, and like a bad penny, Officer Mokoena would turn up again, back in uniform, back at her old tricks, often with a renewed sense of impunity. It seemed like she just couldn't be fired. This cycle of suspension and reinstatement had a devastating effect on public morale. I mean, how can you trust the system when you see the same corrupt officer who you personally reported back on the job a few months later? It creates a sense of hopelessness, a feeling that reporting corruption is just a waste of time. Officer Mokoena became a symbol of a broken system, where accountability was pretty much a myth. Her career of comebacks finally hit a wall when a coalition of civil society organizations, including Corruption Watch, took up her case. They consolidated all the different complaints against her, dating back years. They didn't just focus on one incident. They built a comprehensive profile of her entire career of misconduct. They put public pressure on the department, highlighting her case as a prime example of systemic failure. Faced with a mountain of consolidated evidence and intense media scrutiny, the department was finally forced to take permanent action, ending the long and costly career of Officer Precious Mokoena. Entering our top 3 is a man whose audacity is matched only by his creativity. Constable Sibusiso Zulu didn't need a real offense to get money out of you. He didn't even need a real fine, he just created his own. Zulu was the architect of an infamous fake fines operation, essentially printing his own money in the form of completely bogus traffic tickets. His operation was brilliantly simple. Zulu and his small crew got their hands on a graphic designer and a printer. They meticulously replicated the official traffic infringement notices issued by the municipality. They looked perfect. They had the right logos, the right fonts, the right layout. The only difference was a crucial one: the banking details at the bottom of the form. Instead of leading to the city's account, they led directly to a personal bank account controlled by Zulu. Armed with a stack of these counterfeit tickets, Zulu would go on patrol. He'd pull people over for minor, often imaginary infractions. You failed to indicate a lane change in your heart, or something equally ridiculous. Instead of engaging in a long negotiation for a cash bribe, he would appear to be doing everything by the book. He'd take out his clipboard, fill out the fake ticket with a flourish, and hand it to the driver with a stern warning. Most drivers, believing they had received a legitimate fine, would go home and, wanting to settle the matter quickly, would make an electronic payment to the bank account listed on the form. They thought they were paying the government. In reality, they were paying Constable Zulu directly. It was a clean, contactless form of corruption. He never had to handle dirty cash, and the transaction looked like a legitimate bill payment from the victim's side. The scam was uncovered by a vigilant bank employee. This employee noticed that a personal account belonging to a Mr. S. Zulu was receiving dozens of payments every day, all in amounts that were typical for traffic fines: $250, $500, $750. The payment references often included things like traffic fine or a license plate number. The employee's suspicion was raised, they flagged the account for investigation, and the whole fraudulent enterprise unraveled. Zulu wasn't just a corrupt cop, he was a full-blown fraudster. Our runner-up for the most corrupt traffic cop in South Africa is Officer Nomsa Mabuza, a woman whose actions didn't just steal money from people, they directly endangered lives. Her specialty was one of the most serious offenses on the road: drunk driving. But for Officer Mabuza, a positive breathalyzer reading wasn't a public safety crisis, it was a business opportunity. She was the deal maker for drunk drivers. Mabuza often worked the night shift, specifically targeting routes near popular nightlife districts. When she pulled over a driver and suspected they were intoxicated, she would perform a breathalyzer test. If the driver was over the legal limit, the moment that should have led to an arrest instead became a high-stakes negotiation. She knew that for many people, especially those with professional careers, a DUI charge could be devastating. It could mean a criminal record, a lost license, and a lost job. She exploited that fear to its absolute maximum. With the positive reading on the breathalyzer as her leverage, she would lay out the grim consequences. The night in a holding cell, the legal fees, the public shame. She painted a dark picture. Then, just as despair set in for the driver, she would offer her alternative, a one-time significant cash payment. We're not talking 200 for a cool drink here. Mabuza's prices were in the thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of rands, depending on how wealthy she assessed the driver to be. For that price, she would make the problem disappear. She would cancel the test, let the driver sleep it off in their car for an hour, or in some cases, she was alleged to have even offered to drive the intoxicated person home herself for an extra fee. She was essentially running a private, illegal, and highly dangerous taxi service for drunk drivers. Every time she took a payment, she was putting that impaired driver right back on the road, where they could kill themselves or an innocent family. Her downfall came when she tried to shake down the wrong person, an off-duty prosecutor. He had been at a dinner where he'd had 2 glasses of wine over several hours and was confident he was under the limit. Mabuza pulled him over and, using a faulty or manipulated breathalyzer, claimed he was well over. When she started her usual shakedown speech, the prosecutor knew exactly what was happening. He played along, recorded the conversation on his phone, and arranged to pay her. The payment was delivered by a team of arresting officers. Her dangerous deals were finally done. And here we are. The #1 spot on our countdown of South Africa's most corrupt traffic cops. This position is reserved for a man who wasn't just a corrupt officer, he was an institution of corruption. Inspector Jacob Maseko. For years, Maseko operated with such impunity in his district that he was known simply as the landlord. If you wanted to drive through his territory, you had to pay rent. Inspector Maseko's corruption was systemic and all-encompassing. He didn't just take bribes himself. He ran the entire traffic department in his area like a mafia boss. He took a cut from every junior officer's illicit earnings. He decided who worked the most lucrative routes. He had connections in the vehicle licensing department, the roadworthy testing centers, and even local politics. He had built a complete ecosystem of graft, and he sat at the very top. His schemes were varied and audacious. He was involved in everything we've talked about today. He took payoffs from trucking companies like Thabo Molefe. He ran a ticket-fixing operation like Lerato Dlamini. He extorted motorists at roadblocks like Themba and Nkosi. But his signature move was targeting small business owners. He would harass delivery vans and company vehicles with endless inspections until the owner agreed to pay a monthly protection fee to be left alone. For years, complaints against Maseko went nowhere. He was a master at intimidating witnesses and making dockets disappear. He seemed untouchable, protected by a network of cronies he had enriched. He would openly boast about his connections, telling victims that reporting him was a waste of time, because the report would end up on his desk anyway. This created a climate of fear where people were too scared to speak out. The end for the landlord came not from a single sting, but from a long, painstaking investigation by a special national anti-corruption task force, the Hawks. They were brought in after the sheer volume of complaints could no longer be ignored at a provincial level. They operated in secret for over a year, using sophisticated surveillance, tracking his finances and flipping some of his junior officers, offering them immunity in exchange for testimony. When they finally moved in, they didn't just arrest Maseko, they dismantled his entire network. The fall of Inspector Jacob Maseko was a monumental victory against systemic corruption, and a message that no one is above the law forever. And there you have it. 10 stories, 10 examples of how a position of public trust can be twisted for personal gain. It's easy to get angry listening to these stories, and you should be. This isn't just about money, it's about the erosion of faith in the people who are supposed to keep us safe. It's about the creation of a two-tier system where justice is for sale. But anger is only the first step. The next step is action. We cannot become numb to this. We have to remain vigilant. Every time you see that blue light, you shouldn't have to wonder if it's a public servant or a predator approaching your car. The only way to change the culture is to make it impossible for corruption to thrive. Report every incident. Use the hotlines, use the apps, tell the story. Support the organizations that are fighting this fight on our behalf. It's a long road, but it's one we have to travel together if we want to reach a destination where a traffic stop is just a traffic stop. Thank you for watching. If these stories resonated with you, if you believe this is a conversation we need to keep having, please hit that like button and subscribe for more exposés like this one. And remember, this list is not exhaustive. We know there are more stories out there, more names that belong in the spotlight, so let us know in the comments if you think we missed anyone. Stay safe, stay honest, and I'll see you in the next video.